you find your way to the office or back home in time as you should be. Anyway, time for us to get into our Kickstarter conversation. And this morning we're going to be talking about money and elections. Those are two things that almost come hand in hand. Money is very essential for the operations of political parties, and particularly if affects candidates in electoral processes. However, political financing regulations can affect women's access to run as candidates, be elected, campaign, and reach out to the population. As the country prepares for the next general election in 2021, calls are being made for government to consider regulation election financing and limit the amount of money used in campaigns to enable more women to vie for elective leadership positions. How can this be achieved is the question we are asking this morning, and we are joined by Mr. Henry Muguzi, the Executive Director, Alliance for Election Finance Monitoring, and Miss Grace Regina Akulu, Institute for Social Transformation. This one has had a direct experience with these financing hurdles firsthand and will be sharing her experience. But before she does, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us. Let me start with you, Mr. Muguzi, before we even zero down on women and how it has limited them. Regulation. Is it possible?
Yes, regulating money in elections is possible. In the countries where democracy has taken root, this is a thing that they have had to deal with. Because you see, you cannot think about free and fair elections if you don't regulate money. Because money destabilizes the conditions for political competition. Money, favors certain candidates against others. And money locks out certain candidates. But also, money opens doors for self-seeking individuals. That's why today we are talking about commercialization of electoral processes. Because now, participation in electoral processes seems to be motivated by money. So if you don't regulate money, this is what you're going to have. Politicians who don't have much access to money are going to be locked out. And now the bourgeois, the businessmen, will now take over. Now when the country is in the hands of businessmen, you can understand what will happen. That there will not be policies formulated for the benefit of the citizens. It will be for the benefit of those few that are in parliament, because commercialization of anything is self-centered, and therefore regulating of money is critical.
Yes, you say it's critical, but you know what they say, it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
How possible is it?
Right. It has to start with the lawmakers agreeing that there's a problem. And I think right now we are agreeing as a country, Uganda, that there is a problem. There is a problem of commercialization of politics. Politics is so commercialized.
Yeah, okay? It's now like a business.
Absolutely. The major motivation for people participating in electoral processes is now money.
Is the earnings.
Whether they are voters, they need the money. Today they are saying in punk way. Whether it is candidates,
we've had MPs who said
whether it is political parties, because now you hear there's the legislation coming which will allow all political parties registered to benefit from some sort of public funding. So these are all motivations. So the major motivation is not serving the community, but the populace, but money. So when that happens, you need to regulate this. As we always say, it's like you have a bus. This bus is moving. That bus needs brakes. Now, this bus that is politics and electoral processes that is moving so fast, we need brakes on it. And the way we are going to brake it is by regulating campaign financing.
You know why I asked whether it's how possible it is, and because of two reasons. One is let me make it three. One, we have had, like you said yourself, it's now a business, almost a business.
Yes.
The motivation for people to get into politics now, which wasn't the case before.
Yes.
We have had MPs outrightly coming out and telling us, and these are people who are already in office.
Yes.
These are people who have been elected into it. This year already we have had incidents where the people in those offices that make the laws and the structures are already increasing their salaries. They are the same people who will either accept this proposal and put it into law or not. Do you think they are going to get something that is going to bind them or limit their earnings,
this is
and make it law?
actual law would favor incumbents. You know why? You see, when you contest for an election, and those who have done so will bear as witness, you spend a lot of money. Now, those that are in parliament today have spent in excess of 400 million. But there are also those that have spent $1 billion and more.
Yes.
It's the same story at district level. Now, but they tell you that once you swear in as a member of parliament, that now opens a new chapter of spending. So you spend all throughout the 5 years because people approach you with all sorts of personal problems, okay? And you are basically held hostage.
Yeah.
You understand? That by the time you get to 2021, you don't have enough money. So when you regulate this and make sure that you don't have competitors who have not tested the ground as yet, who have kept their money and are waiting for the whistle, then you have that regulated. Then you don't have to suffer, because this is why when they get into the elections, those incumbents, whether they lose or don't lose, even when they succeed, they get financially indebted. And normally in our own language we say they get so financially shattered, tattered and tattooed that you've seen them being arrested, haven't you?
Yes.
Why is this happening?
Yes.
So this is a problem, and so it would favor them. So a lot of them, now we have a private member in parliament who is working on a private member's bill. But I can assure you that that private member's bill coming up to regulate election campaign financing is gaining traction, is becoming popular. Fellow MPs are asking him, when are you bringing it, Alex? The private member is Alex Ruhunda. When are you bringing it up? So it will actually gain support.
How does this work? How does this work? How do you regulate it? Because you see, the next question is, if I am vying for office, I am going to take a loan to finance these elections, these my campaigns. How are you going to stop me from getting a loan? Because I don't think you have the powers to stop me from getting money from the bank.
Actually,
to achieve something that I want to get.
The way it operates is like this, that there are provisions that would require you to declare the sources of your money. And some of these sources, by the way, need a question, because some of them are business companies that
we don't want you to run your company down
they are backrolling these candidates. That when you know, in this country, the political leader is also the tenderpreneur. They determine who takes the contracts, so they bankroll them. So if they declare, then you are able to say, okay, those were your funders. Now, but also the law would put a cap that you see, if you are contesting for member of parliament for a rural constituency, this is the cap. You are not supposed to spend beyond above this. Okay?
Who monitors so that spending?
Civil society will be there, fellow candidates, and they will be happy to do this.
But you see, this is,
fellow candidates will be happy to do this.
How hard that could be.
The Electoral Commission or any other political finance regulator, institution that is designated to be political finance regulator, will monitor this. It works. So when you put a cap, it means that even if you've raised the 1 billion, you'll only be allowed to spend,
let's say, 300
million. And you must declare that spending. So if you declare to the contrary, you declare less, and there is the evidence that you've spent more, all those can lead to cancellation of your election.
Akulu, let's now talk about the reality of it. Yeah. Is this really possible? Do you think you can be monitored out there as you're doing your campaigns? Yeah. Can you really be regulated on how much you spend?
Thank you. I wouldn't start exactly from the point you've asked.
Okay.
Thank you, viewers. One of the reasons probably I'm not in parliament today is because I didn't have enough financing. Because I contested as member of parliament, as a candidate for member of parliament, Agago district in 2016.
Who are you running against?
We had, at primary level, we had 8 candidates, and then that was at NRM primaries, and then at the final, we had Honorable Franca, who is in parliament right now.
So, in other words, Honorable Franca had more money than you.
I'll come to that. I'll get to that. Yeah, so probably that could be one of the reasons, but partially. To me, regulating election financing starts with changing the mindset of our people. You realize that not everybody who has money is in parliament right now. But also, not everybody who has the interest to get to Parliament gets to Parliament because of insufficient funding. What do I mean here? It's important for us to understand that the economy right now is at a level where our people highly depend on the politicians. That's one thing we have to know. That when you go for rallies, people attend your rallies not on picking the issues that you're presenting as a candidate, but looking at your pocket. How much
which car did you come driving?
I came in the bus.
How much money are you spreading? That's what the people are looking at.
Exactly. Do you have a public address system? What are you going to give them? Is there any bull that they are going to scatter to slaughter at the end of it all? You know, because there are different groups that come dancing and all that kind of thing. So we are actually evaluated, or we are valued as per how much you have as a candidate, other than what potential or what manifesto or what agenda do you have for the people down there.
How do we change that mindset? Because it's one that we've had that discussion here before.
Yes.
And I'm not going to struggle to remember who we had it with, but how do we change the mindset of people, knowing that these people that we are voting into office, we are voting them into office to help us, or at whatever level we are, so that we can have good roads in our region, in our district, in our local areas, so that we can have security, so that how do we change that mindset and switch people from thinking about money and thinking about the reason why we are sending these representatives into their offices?
And then another question that you would ask yourself is, why do people have that mindset? Okay. Why do they have that mindset? One, you look at the level of poverty in Uganda. It's really high. And the level of literacy, especially among the women, is also very high. That means that we are dealing with people whose economic level is low. Okay, so that means if you are to change my mindset, you must change my economic status in the first place. So that even as I attend to you, I do not look at your pockets, but I look at your mind, or I look at what potential you have, what agenda do you have as a candidate to represent me in Parliament, or to represent me at whatever level. So for me, the first thing is that looking at the majority voters who are women. Okay, and these women, as I told you, have low economic level status. They have low literacy level generally into the country. So the first thing for me is we need, as an economy, to increase or to empower economically the women at grassroots level, so that they are able to appreciate the fact that the leaders who go to Parliament are not there to feed them. The leaders who go to Parliament are not there to pay school fees, because that is what we look at, by the way, on our representatives in Parliament. So if you empower me as a woman and I have the resources, I have my money, so I will not be exploited, to vote whoever has money. But I will, I have I will have a good insight to understand who exactly has the agenda to promote or to develop or to uplift me as a woman from the level in which I am to another level. You have talked about, you seem to be very, very passionate about women. Yes.
And
yes, I do.
Their position in the politics in this country.
Yes.
Do you really feel that they have been held back? Because you see, we keep having this discussion of gender balance and equal pay and all that, and I'm one of those people that doesn't like to have the discussion of women separate away from men, because I think that is the beginning of it all. I always want us to have a discussion in general. Let's talk about people, men and women, in one circle, though I know that is sometimes not possible, because the statistics are clear, very clear in this country. Sure. That we have less women in politics, we have the literacy levels with women are low, even economic status are low. So how much does it affect women when it comes to politics?
It very much affects women. First and foremost, I thank you for appreciating the fact that we are at that level as women, and also for recognizing the fact that we can't talk, you can't put men and women in one basket and speak about issues that affect them, because we are affected differently and we are at different levels of economic and literacy level status. Now, how do we do that is the question you've asked. personally, as Regina and the viewers out there, you will believe me that when you look at the economy right now, like I mentioned earlier on, the politics of this country is being facilitated or sponsored by investors. And who are these investors? The investors are the men out there. Look at the women in the informal sector. How many? They constitute over 70% of the population in the informal sector. But even irrespective despite their population in the informal sector, even look at what they are selling. They are in perishable products. They are in petty businesses of maybe a basket of bananas, a basket of tomatoes. When men are in wholesales, men are in metallic workshops, men are selling TVs, are selling things of millions and billions, and women are selling things of 1,000 or 5,000. Now I'm coming to your question. Yeah. Now you realize that in Uganda today, and even in the entire economy, Africa, people listen to you depending on how much you have, like I mentioned before. And then people vote you because you've given them something. So how much money do women right now have to offer to the electorate so they are able to be voted in? In electoral process, right from LC1 to president, you need money to plan, you need money to facilitate your allies, you need money to bring your opponents, because politics is about persuading your opponents to come on your side. Yeah. But do we have that money as women at this point? We do not have it, because the economic empowerment strategy in this country has not empowered us or has not favored us at all. You look at the affirmative action that we have right now. Look, when you read and peruse through the affirmative action policy that we have, the gender policy that we have, then it is not favorable. How many women are in parliament? If you count them, they are representing districts, and districts have constituencies. Men who are facilitated equally with women at same amount, for example, are running round in the entire district, and a man is running in a quarter a constituency within a district, and yet parliament and Uganda is facilitating them at equal pay and equal level. So how do you compete? How do you put us in one basket? I do
feel you with this.
It's a pain that we have to hustle right now. Actually, for me, what the political reform right now should be focusing on is to reform the constituency coverage. That what is the coverage that a woman has to represent, and what is the coverage that my brother has to represent? Okay. If you are representing, for example, a county with six sub-counties and one town council, and I have 13 administrative units, and then you tell me that we are equal with this man? We are not.
Mr. Muguzi, you do feel her argument.
I do, really.
But this is not about to suddenly change. It's not going. We're not going to wake up in the morning tomorrow, and that 70% of literacy level for women is the other way around.
Absolutely not.
Even the economic status, it's not going to suddenly change tomorrow or by 2021. What's the way forward? How do we go about this? How do we turn tables? Because even when we come up with this regulation election financing, it doesn't mean that is giving them more money. It's only putting a cap. But there are still many people who, even within that cap, might not be able to match. Because if I am going into an election with Madame Akulu here, and you have said we are going to spend 300 million in that election, it doesn't mean, and the list, it doesn't mean that you have given her the 300 million. It still means that you have given me a cap. I could decide to buy more cars and show off to my constituency there, and I'll still look bigger than her. So how do we balance this?
I think what has to be understood is this, that we need to understand where we came from, because you see, society, voters, the electorate in Uganda were never like this before. There was a time when there was no money in the picture, and all you needed to spend on is your facilitation, your money to take you to.
It's actually the people that would come up with that money and all that. Yes.
So it starts in 2001.
Why does it change there? Why do you think it changed?
I think the whole dynamic of the party and power splitting and one of their own coming into the picture, that changes the ball game, and then they start using all types of tricks, and then money becomes one of them. Now, so it's not true that people are taking this money because they are poor. Because these people in Uganda today have not just migrated into Uganda. They are the ones who voted in CA. And money was not so, but they started testing and testing until it has become sweeter now. But how going forward? I think one of the things we need to consider seriously is to reduce the salary of the member of parliament,
which they have just
absolutely. We need to reduce it, because now that's the major motivation for business interests.
Mr. Muguzi, I don't think there is a single member of parliament that is going to agree with you on that.
Those are some of the radical reforms you have to make.
But you see, when you say radical reforms, you see all these reforms that we are talking about here today, these are agreed upon in parliament.
Yes.
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 These are the same people that agree on adding their salary. You think they are going to add? They are going to agree with you to cut their salary?
So I think we are in such.
So the radicalness of this, I don't know where it is going to come from. Is it going to come from the big man himself and saying, "I am going to we are not going to have a discussion on this. We are just cutting the salaries"?
We need to start dialogue on that matter. But what I think now has to happen is to kind of demotivate, to reduce the motivation of
dialogue with
parliament. Okay, so the stakeholder, because the people who have a stake in democracy in Uganda, not only the members of parliament, they can be influenced and so on.
Okay.
So, but we need, that's one of the the reforms that we need. But also we need to legislate, because you see there are those legitimate costs that you have to incur. Okay. Now, if you leave only those legitimate costs, then you bring down the amount of money. But what happens on the ground is this: that there is a time it turns into a spending war.
Yes.
And of course, if it is a spending war, if I'm eating mangoes, the more mangoes I get, the better. So when it becomes a spending war, everybody wants to flex and show that they have more money, and so, and you have these agents who come and tell you, Madam Christine, the other constituency is going. If you can find 200 million,
I will bring it back.
You bring it back. Yeah. And then you rush to get this 200 million. Then the other one is told, he has bought 200 million.
And then he goes and brings.
So it becomes a spending one, escalates the cost of campaigning. So if we can limit that at only those legitimate costs of transport, of posters, of your campaign agents, and so on, maybe that would be okay. Now, the other thing we have to do is this: that the citizenry, you see, for you to stand now, what she didn't tell you is that for you to stand now in 2021, you should have started in 2016, showing to the people that you are this not only interested, but you are caring. You are
attend funerals.
So what do you do? Attend funerals, contribute to this, contribute to that, go to churches and contribute fundraising. You are spending all those 5 years. So that when you emerge as candidate, they say, "Oh yeah,
she has been
absolutely, she's been with us." You understand? Yeah. So, but the electorate can change this, because they were not like this before. The religious, what are they called? Religious institutions, the churches, the mosques, they need to be reined in, because they escalate. These candidates you see here are ambushed every Sunday or every Friday. When they show up for prayers, then suddenly there some 2 chicken pop up, fundraise, or a few bunches of bananas or avocados.
I get your point now. Madam Akulu, before, because we don't have that much time, and unfortunately we have a few minutes left, I'm going to give you two minutes. Yeah. Just to have your final say on this. How do we achieve this, and how possible is it, and what do we need to do?
First of all, like I said before, we need to change the mindsets of the people. We need to get there and conscientize the people. How do we do that? We need to get out, like as civil society and government, and do civic education on voting, so that the people get to understand the purpose for which they vote. Okay. Not voting on monetary value. And then we also need, as women, I call upon the men to support women to get into leadership, and also to have women who are already in leadership to nurture other women who will succeed them in the near future. So that as women, you are able to, pull another woman up, so that we have more women into leadership. Like a number of debates have been on about the number of women in parliament or in leadership versus their influence in policy or in development. For me, number matters, but also the issue of their influence is key. The women that we elect into political leadership positions, what are they doing, for example, now to ensure that this tomorrow,
yes,
which today,
yes,
actually which starts today, things get to change for another woman to also occupy the same position. It is very, very key. First, lastly, I would like to say that the issue of finance needs not to be underlooked, because I had a first-hand experience that I lost because I not purely because I didn't have the resources, but partially because I didn't have the resources. And also, like I said, the people who have more of these resources are our men. Okay, and these are the men who shape the perceptions in society, and the perceptions in society have been shaped in a patriarchal direction. That in a way that I am defined not as Regina, but I am defined in my husband's name. For example, if you go to my village right now where I'm married, people do not know who I am, but just mention Okot's wife. Then they know, oh, Okot's wife in the other village, oh, that lady. Then they get to know you better. So how do we define ourselves as women? We need to redirect the way people define us as women to be able to unveil the potentials that we have versus what the people perceive of who we are. And finally, my brother, when men start thinking like fathers, then that is the point where we shall begin to move. And it is not about time, it is about action now that we have to take on together with you men to ensure that you help us facilitate our process.
What are we thinking like now?
You have been calling.
It's a call.
In a minute or two, you're parting shots.
It's a call.
You're parting shots, Mr. Muguzi.
Yes. The truth is we need more women in these political spaces because men power need to be counterbalanced.
Okay. The good thing is you agree on that.
That's what we agree.
Okay. Good.
But for that to happen, we need a lot of stakeholders to play a role. Civic education, as she said, is quite critical to change the mindsets. We need religious leaders coming to the picture. Political parties have to open the doors and train more women, empower them to be future leaders. But also the women have to step forward because at the moment, not many of them are daring enough to challenge men on direct positions.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Very, very interesting conversation. The good thing is that you two both agree. So I think when you live here, you can just go into the boardroom, both of you get a paper, have some tea, write down a few things that you can go back and share with your teams. Anyway, thank you very much joining us this morning for a Kickstarter conversation. We're taking a look at election financing and women participation in politics. And of course, joining us is Miss Grace Regina Akulu, Institute for Social Transformation. This one was downed properly in the previous elections, but we wish you the best in the upcoming elections.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
And of course, we were joined by Mr. Henry Muguzi, Executive Director, Alliance for Election Finance Monitoring. Thank you very much for joining us, and good morning to you. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure.
Okay, we'll be back in a few minutes. Morning at 10 TV continues. We'll be getting into our Tech Note station right after this.
Uganda! Check it out! Your Wednesdays will never be the same again. Patrick Salvador presents a brand new comedy night in town. Just Comedy. The live recordings will be happening at the 7